of this meeting. There we go. Right now, and this slide is a notice that this virtual public meeting is being recorded. It's a public record, so that means that MassDOT may choose to retain and distribute the video, images, audio, or transcript, and all of those things are considered the public record. If you're not comfortable with that, you can listen silently and refrain from using the Q&A feature or the raised hand feature. Or if you'd like, you could choose to excuse yourself from the meeting entirely. Information from the meeting will be posted on the mass.gov website. Please note that your mic and webcam are disabled upon entering the meeting, so we can have a smooth presentation, but we will take Q&A at the end of the presentation, and you'll be able to unmute your microphone at that time. Finally, a survey will pop up at the very end of this meeting, and we do appreciate your feedback on that survey. It helps us make our virtual meetings better. And finally, we have MassDOT's policy on diversity and civil rights up on screen. It states that all MassDOT activities, including public meetings, are meant to be free of discrimination. MassDOT complies with all federal and state civil rights requirements preventing discrimination based on protected characteristics. We welcome the diversity from across our entire service area. If you have questions or concerns or want to learn more, you can visit the website shown on screen, which is mass.gov/non-discrimination in transportation program with dashes between those last 4 words. And that will take you to the Office of Diversity and Civil Rights. Note that all questions and comments tonight are welcome and appreciated, but we do request that you refrain from any disrespectful comments. Now I'll turn it back over to the MassDOT project manager, Dave.
Okay, thanks, Leah. The project we'll be presenting this evening is for the Route 3A resurfacing and related work project. During tonight's meeting, we will be covering the following topics. First, I will remind everyone of the background and goals of the project. Then we will discuss the public feedback received during the previous public informational meeting held last November. If you would like to refresh your memory of that meeting, a recording of the meeting is available on the MassDOT's website. And at the end of this presentation, we'll provide you with a link or a QR code so you can find it. Next, we will provide updates on what has happened since the previous public meeting. We will also discuss concerns identified in the meeting and how MassDOT has responded. Lastly, we will briefly go over the construction approach on this project before providing contact information and offering a Q&A period. So before we get started, I would like to introduce the members of tonight's panel. From MassDOT, besides myself, we have Brian Fallon, the MassDOT District 4 Project Development Engineer. From the consulting firm Howard Stein Hudson, we have Peter Robleski, who is the project manager, and Jessica Litza, the manager for traffic engineering. Our producers tonight are Leah Grodstein and Hung Pham. This public meeting was advertised in the Daily Times Chronicle on July 25th and August 1st of 2023, and the Lowell Sun on July 25th and August 1st. The flyer and meeting notice was shared with the towns of Burlington and Billerica for their use to post on local media outlets, as well as with the organization People Helping People. The hearing information is also shared throughout the MassDOT website, the MassDOT Facebook account, and the MassDOT Twitter account. How did we get here? On November 17, 2022, MassDOT hosted a public informational meeting to present this project. The meeting was very well attended with lots of great feedback and comments, both positive and negative. After the hearing, many of the concerns that were expressed at that meeting, MassDOT engineers decided it would be a worthwhile exercise to ask the consultant, Howard Stein Hudson, to do a reevaluation of the traffic design of the corridor to ensure that we were proposing a design that provides a balance between optimum safety without compromising traffic operations. In a few minutes, Peter will give you a detailed explanation regarding what the process was for this reevaluation. Briefly, the evaluation involved additional traffic data collection, additional traffic modeling, proposed design modifications, a resubmission to MassDOT, additional review by MassDOT traffic engineers. So tonight, MassDOT is hosting this meeting to describe the results of our efforts and to present the final modified design. So this is a locus plan of the limits of the project. North is located to the top of the screen. The yellow-orange line represents the Route 3A project limits. The Burlington Common is shown towards the bottom of the screen in green. The limit of paving is a 3.2 mile stretch of roadway from the north at the Shawshene River Bridge in Billerica, which is just south of the restaurant Jade Pacific, and extends south to Birchcrest Street, which is just south or across the street from the high school driveway in Burlington. Project needs. Route 3A was initially selected for pavement maintenance by the MassDOT Pavement Management Group. The segment of Route 3A has potholes, cracking, and minor raveling of the pavement along the route. This is typically a simple process of removing 2 inches of pavement and replacing it with more pavement. In addition to the pavement deficiencies, there's some safety concerns within the corridor related to the excessively wide lanes, which encourage high speeds, forces vehicles to occasionally cross the double yellow line for passing, makes it difficult for vehicles taking a left turn when exiting adjacent businesses and residents, as well as other safety issues. The consultant reviewed the existing traffic conditions and crash data to determine the appropriate countermeasures to these safety issues. In addition to meeting those two goals of maintaining the roadway surface and improving safety, this project also provides improved accessibility for pedestrians, transit riders, cyclists, as required by state and federal regulations. The project is currently estimated to cost just over $7 million. Funding is coming from both state and federal money, which requires us to follow all state and federal requirements in order to capture the funds. This includes following all Complete Streets initiatives required to the maximum extent possible. Next slide. So the progress since November. I'd like to talk now about what MassDOT has been doing since our previous public meeting regarding the project and how the public feedback altered our design. During the previous public meeting held in November 2022, we received lots of public feedback regarding this project. During the meeting, there was some who voiced support for the project and many who expressed concerns. We received many emails following the meeting, both supporting and also expressing concern. We heard concerns that the previous traffic data that we used in our analysis was collected during the COVID pandemic, and that the impact of the design, the impact that may have on the design and the traveling public. Some of the written concerns were related to bike lanes, road surface, traffic noise, pollution, project communication, safety, and traffic congestion. We also received messages expressing support for the project, specifically identifying the improved accessibility for all users, improving the condition of the roadway, and most of all, improving safety in the corridor. Each individual comment that was sent to MassDOT received a written response. The most notable concerns expressed were related to traffic. So this presentation is going to focus on what the traffic design revisions have been made to the project after listening to your public input. So at this time, I'd like to hand over the conversation to Peter Robleski, project manager from Howard Stein Hudson. Peter?
Thank you, Dave. So to ensure our design was responsive to post-COVID traffic demands, we collected new traffic counts in December 2022. All 14 study area intersections were counted on Wednesday, December 14th, 2022, and it was confirmed for the count dates that the collection represented a typical weekday and did not overlap with any holidays, school breaks, or inclement weather. The intersection turning movement counts included vehicles, heavy vehicles, pedestrians, and bikes from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. I got a note here that I'm echoey. It might take out my headphones, see if that helps.
Leah, if you can message me and let me know if that works better. The intersection turning movement counts included vehicles, heavy vehicles, pedestrians, and bikes from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Additionally, 48-hour continuous counts were taken at 6 locations along the Route 3A corridor, which collected the number of vehicles, vehicle classifications, and vehicle speed. 24-hour continuous counts were also collected along 9 of the intersecting roadways. The chart on this slide presents the volume of vehicles traveling along Route 3A per hour throughout the day, collected at one of the 48-hour continuous counting stations. The chart reflects the significant morning and evening commuting traffic through the corridor. We use the new traffic data to perform a detailed traffic analysis along the corridor. The analysis showed that under the previous design, there were some traffic backups expected at the merge from 2 lanes to 1 lane north of the intersection with Skilton Lane. Additionally, the model showed traffic backups and delay expected south of Bedford Street through the intersection with the high school if the roadway was formalized with 1 lane in each direction. With this additional information, we adjusted the design in these areas to mitigate these impacts to the best of our ability while still improving safety and providing bicycle accommodations where we can. The merge from 2 lanes to 1 lane, which previously occurred at Skilton Lane, was shifted further north and provided a longer distance to merge over to reduce the traffic backups anticipated from the merge. South of Bedford Street, the design will no longer propose to formalize 1 lane in each direction and will instead maintain the existing roadway geometry. In November 2022, the project design we presented included bike lanes south of Bedford Street, as shown on the graphic here. The traffic analysis performed in 2023 showed that including these bike lanes south of Bedford Street results in significantly longer queues than a design without bike lanes. Adding these bike lanes would decrease the storage for northbound queues and would create longer queues that could spill back as far as the intersection at Burlington High School. Queue spillback through the intersection at Burlington High School would impact safety operations of that intersection. The traffic data collected on Route 3A between Bedford Street and Burlington High School shows that traffic volumes peak with typical commuting hours, as well as school arrival and dismissal. This means the significant queuing resulting from the 2022 design, which introduces bike lanes, would likely be experienced for multiple hours throughout the day. Because introducing bike lanes between Bedford Street and Burlington High School would increase queuing and impact safety, the bike lanes, which had previously been proposed from Bedford Street to the southern project limit, are no longer included in the project. As you can see in this graphic, the current project design no longer includes bike lanes at this location, nor are they proposed from Bedford Street to the project south to the project limit. Additionally, since the previous public meeting, additional sidewalk reconstruction has been included in the project design, as you can see it in the graphic here. During the previous public information meeting in November 2022, it was requested that the lane merge just north of Skilton Lane be relocated to avoid conflict with the driveway at 242 Cambridge Street, Route 3A, since it is a heavily trafficked driveway. This graphic shows that the 2022 design, where the bike lane begins a little bit farther south of Skilton, near the used bookstore driveway. As part of the additional traffic analysis performed in 2023, and you can go to the next slide, We assessed the impacts to traffic if the taper were relocated as requested. Our analysis identified that relocating the taper was possible and would reduce congestion without significantly reducing bicycle accessibility. We have extended the merge 500 feet farther to the north, which has lengthened the merging distance provided to vehicles. This design change will reduce the potential for queuing and congestion and will help avoid spillback into the intersections with Terry Avenue and Wynn Street. This design update is also consistent with public comments received. As shown in this graphic, the merge which happened at Skilton Avenue in our 2022 design is now farther north toward Kenny Avenue. This graphic also highlights how sidewalk replacement has been added to the project. With these design changes in place, there are still expected to be impacts to vehicular traffic. Our design balances minimizing traffic time increases with safety improvements and the Healthy Transportation Act, which sets policy for design to all modes of transportation. This slide presents the travel time results from the no-build and build traffic models. These have changed from previous results presented in November 2022 due to the new traffic data collected and more robust traffic modeling performed. Vehicles traveling northbound in the evening peak hour are expected to see the most significant increase in travel time at just over 2 additional minutes of travel. And now I'll hand control back over to David.
Thanks, Peter. Now we'll discuss the construction approach for the project. MassDOT will have a resident engineer on site to ensure all work is done according to the approved contract documents. Coordination between the contractor and the towns regarding the schedule of construction operation will be facilitated by the resident engineer through regular meetings. During construction, existing travel lanes will be maintained as much as possible to limit travel disruption. Only short-term temporary lane closures are anticipated. Access to adjacent businesses and residents will be maintained at all times. The design documents that will be released to the contractor will include temporary traffic management plans. The contractor, however, once hired, may develop and use their own plans with prior approval to the towns and MassDOT. Notification prior to construction will be via variable message boards placed within the corridor prior to the start of construction, as well as through local media and social outlets. Next steps. After this public informational meeting, we will advertise the final plans, specifications, and estimate. This project is scheduled to be advertised for construction September 2nd, 2023. The contract should be awarded to a contractor later this fall. Construction will likely begin first thing next spring. The first construction activities you will see will be work to curbing, sidewalks, pedestrian ramps, and things that will not affect existing traffic operations. Paving work will be one of the later construction activities. Work will be complete late 2025 or early 2026. How will we keep you informed? So there are several ways to contact us regarding the project. You can send in written comments to the chief engineer, Carrie Lavallee, whose address is shown on the screen. You can also submit email comments, MassDOT project management at dot.state.ma.us. They will come directly to the project manager. For more information, you can visit the website shown on the bottom there. The QR code on the right, I think if you use that, it'll take you directly to our website where the video from the previous meeting is. So if you want to watch that, you can use the QR code or else the website. So that concludes the presentation portion of tonight's meeting. I'll now turn the presentation over to Leah, who will explain how to participate in the Q&A.
Thank you, Dave. Before we have a public Q&A session, MassDOT has a tradition of letting any public or elected officials offer their comments or questions first. If there are any public or elected officials who would like to offer comment, please raise your hand or use the Q&A box. Additionally, please put your title in the Q&A box if it's not in your Zoom name so that we can recognize you properly. While I give those public and elected officials a moment to do so, I'm going to go over the rules for participating in the Q&A tonight. To ask a question verbally, you can click the raise hand icon and Hung will give you access to unmute your microphone. You'll need to unmute it yourself to be heard. If you're joining us by phone, instead of course, clicking on something, you're going to dial *9 instead, and that will raise your hand. If you prefer to type your question, you can click on the Q&A icon and type it out that way, and I'll read it out loud to the project team. For both methods, please ask only one question at a time and limit it to 2 minutes if you're talking verbally, so everyone gets a chance to participate. You can always raise your hand again or submit another question in the Q&A box to rejoin the queue. And thank you in advance for your patience. We have about 70 people on right now, and we want to hear from everyone who wants to tell us anything. Finally, note that once you exit the Zoom webinar, a survey will automatically pop up in your browser. Please take a minute to fill it out. It's very short, and your feedback is very important to us. So first, we are going to open the floor for public or elected official comment. Hung, have you seen anyone who should participate in this?
No, I do not see anyone whom we identified prior based on the registration list. But I also want to add on to what Leah said about people who are calling in. If you press *9, you can raise your hand, and you press *6 to unmute yourself. I know it is not part of the slide that you see on the screen right now. So once again, *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself.
Yeah, it looks like a couple more people have raised their hands since. I
Mike,
believe one of them, yeah.
Mike, I have basically gave you permission to unmute.
Hello, Mike Espejo. Quick question for you. In the last meeting, you guys had travel times from end to end, the impact of the change versus current status quo. Do you still have that? Do you have an updated calculation on what the travel time would be after you made these changes?
Yeah, I think that's the graphic on the screen has it in a little different format than we had last time. Peter, do you want to explain what this chart means?
Sure, no problem. So the green column that you see shows right now what the travel times are, and the build time, the blue column, that's the proposed project that's going to be constructed out there. So you can see AM peak hour southbound, AM peak hour northbound. So obviously northbound and southbound, that's just a direction of travel. And then AM, PM is morning or afternoon. That we did the peak hour, meaning we found when the traffic was highest on an average day of traffic. And that's the travel times from the beginning of our project to the end in each direction during either time of day. And that far right column is the travel time increased. So you can see, AM peak hour southbound, you're adding about a third of a minute. So it's about 20 seconds are going to be added to your drive during peak hour in the morning going southbound, which is the lowest impact. And then the largest impact, you're adding a little over 2 minutes to your drive to go those 3 miles during the peak hour in the northbound direction.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I think based on the lack of people identifying themselves in the Q&A, that might take care of all the public or elected officials. If it doesn't, we apologize, and you can certainly participate in the public Q&A as well. So I'm now going to officially open us up for public comment. Since I'm already talking, I'll just take one question from the Q&A, and then we'll swap back to the raised hands. So I'm going to read a question from Peter Hodges. Is there a reason you're not addressing expanding 3A to 2 full lanes, as the road is currently being used de facto as a 2-lane road? Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, Peter, that's a good question. You know, this project started off, and it's pretty much a resurfacing project. One of the constraints we had is we wanted to try to work curb to curb. So if we were to put in a full 2-lane road each direction, you know, with the required bike accommodations and sidewalks, it would require a lot of property taking, and you know, it'd be a lot of widening too. So that was pretty much not in the scope of this project. Absolutely, you know, having a larger project for this area would be something that might be worthwhile for the towns to look at. But it would be a separate project, and you know, we're doing a resurfacing, and we're already at 7 million. So you can imagine that project would be a lot bigger project. So that's pretty much what the constraints we had with this one.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that a little bit, Dave, because I think that's a great answer, and I think it's probably a question that's going to be a lot of people will have a similar question. When we talk about maintenance, you know, this is obviously going to be a big project, and it's going to be a lot of construction. And I think when people hear the term maintenance, they think, you know, minor work. When we're saying maintenance, we're maintaining the infrastructure that's out there. The roadway surface is not in good condition. It needs to be maintained. It needs to be overlaid with a new pavement course of 2 inches. The sidewalk needs to be fixed. And we're doing all these things on this project as part of the maintenance project. This does not preclude a larger project from coming through in the future, as Dave alluded to, but that would be, you know, an order of magnitude more expensive. You know, in ballpark, you're looking at, you know, 20, 30, 50 million dollars to do that project for that length rather than 7. So financial constraint was a big one. And I do just want to hit home a point. When you said it's currently operating as 2 lanes in each direction, you know, that's one of the safety issues we were trying to solve here. There's not enough room to put 2 lanes in each direction for this road. Even if you don't have bike lanes in the road, there's just not to have those continuous paths of travel. And if you've driven it, you know, when you're trying to operate as 2 lanes, there's near side swipes or actual side swipes as you're driving the road. So solving the safety issue was the big priority here. But it doesn't preclude this from being a larger full corridor project that would widen the road, take property as Dave mentioned, and be a full scale, you know, full depth reconstruction project.
Great, thank you both for those answers. I do see town meeting member from precinct 5, Alex Rutfield, has identified themselves in the Q&A, so I'm going to prioritize that question and read it. So they ask, roughly what percentage of the new paving will have bicycle lanes? Are there concerns about drivers entering that line to go around other drivers taking a left, cutting off cyclists? Thank you for that question.
The percentage, you know, that's we
It's
can
about
figure that out.
2/3.
I know, okay, 2/3. I mean, we tried to make it as much as possible having the bike accommodations, like I said, without affecting traffic operations. So we put as much as we could in. As part of the process, you know, like I said, we had to follow federal state requirements. We had to do a design exception and get it approved through the chief's office to take out some bike accommodation in certain areas for traffic operations, and that's what we did. So about 2/3. And you know, again, if there was a larger project with more cross section, it would be nice to have the accommodation to the whole corridor.
And sorry, just a reminder that the second part of that question was asking about concerns about drivers entering the bike lane to go around, other drivers taking a left.
I'm not quite sure I understand that question. Peter, do you understand?
No, yeah,
what-
Alex, if you're still on, would you mind elaborating a little bit there? I don't know if we can give you the option to speak. Maybe Jess, do you have
I
insight
think-
here?
Yeah, I think I
Thank you.
understand the question. I think it's probably when you're waiting behind a left turning vehicle, are we concerned that, vehicles might go around that person waiting to turn left by traveling through the bike lane? I do think that is a concern. We've provided a painted buffer, but it's not currently physically separated. We certainly want to encourage drivers to follow the rules of the road and comply with the pavement markings, and not make that dangerous maneuver. If that does become a problem post-construction, we can look at targeted tactical separation in areas where it's a concern. One of the challenges of this corridor is how many, curb cuts and driveways there are along it. So providing, continuous in-road separation would be quite challenging. But if there's specific areas that become a safety concern for cyclists after implementation, we can certainly look at that further.
All right, thank you, Jess. Let's swap over to the raised hands now. So I'll turn that back over to Hung.
Thank you, Leah. I'm gonna give Jeff DeBona the floor.
Hi, how you doing?
Hey, Jeff.
You able to hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
sir. Good.
Yeah, Jeff DeBona, Zoning Board of Appeals and Town Meeting Member Precinct 3. I was actually just typing out a response, but I didn't realize we'd be able to speak. So I wanted to thank you for taking a look at this and listening to resident concerns and reassessing the project. And I think it's actually a nice compromise for everyone's concerns. Obviously not ideal for one person or another, but there are guidelines that need to be met by the federal government and the state. And I think you came together pretty good on that. The one criticism I guess I could have on it is 15 or so years ago, Route 3 got widened, but we only got one additional lane in each direction. We have the room now. Are you able to look at possibly adding a fourth lane in either direction to help alleviate traffic going down 3A and all of the side roads? Because Burlington is not the bedroom community it once was. As the population triples during the day, and we have a lot of people commuting in and out. And right now, the way the office buildings are showing, we're about 90% rented, but 40% occupied. We've made the push now to go towards life science, and all the businesses in town and landlords are trying to fill those vacancies. So we are going to see an increased amount of traffic coming down the pipeline in the near future. Is that something that you guys have looked at or thought about?
Yeah, obviously that's well above what we're doing here, but I know when they constructed Route 3, 15 years ago, they graded it out to easily add a fourth lane. I think they have the sub base in, and all the bridges are wide enough to accommodate a fourth lane, after paving. So some of the infrastructure is in place to do that. I don't know, if that has been looked at as something the department would consider in the near future. But I do know it was constructed, so that could be done relatively easily. I don't know, Brian, if you have any more information from a district standpoint.
Yes, Dave, that is a good question, and your answer is correct. The highway was designed to accept a fourth lane in the future, but currently there are no plans to actually construct that fourth lane. So that's kind of where it sits right now. It can be done, but it's going to be another multi-million-dollar project to add that fourth lane. But again, it was something that was considered when the project was done 15 years ago.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Jeff, for that question. I'm going to move on. Just want to make sure that we get to everyone's questions and comments. Right now, we have,
Actually, Hung, can I jump back in? There's been a couple more people in the Q&A who've identified themselves as elected officials. Is it
Okay.
okay if I grab? Thank you.
Yeah.
So the first person is town meeting member from precinct 3, Rich DeBona. Rich asks, in the travel time slide, I was told that the original study was done during COVID, hence much lower traffic. And do the post-construction times account for dropping from 2 lanes to 1? Thank you, Rich.
Yeah, I think the the travel times that you see in that graphic reflect the design that we're presenting tonight. It's slightly different, the travel times, than the last time we presented. One thing I'd like to just reiterate, we went out and took the traffic counts, sort of a worst case scenario. It was, right before Christmas rush, before the kids got out of school. So there was a lot of activity on the road, people out Christmas shopping and going to the mall. So the travel times that were on the screen reflect the current design that we have now.
And to add to that, Dave, and maybe Jess, you can confirm what I'm saying here. The way that the modeling works, first, the clarifier I want to add is that we're formalizing a very wide lane, and that's where the safety concern comes in. And I know that's semantics, and I know that everyone on this call who drives this road knows what that distinction is, but it's really not 2 lanes out there. It's really one wide lane. And that wide lane, the way that it operates now, the way our traffic modeling works is we forecast the future volumes based on, we put some growth rates in there. We anticipate, additional travel, additional vehicles over the next 20 years. But we measure the traffic that's out there now. We take that number of vehicles and, on a broad scale, and that's why I'm going to ask Jess to confirm this because she's our traffic expert. But it's the volume that goes through the modeling. And like Dave said, our current design is what is being tested there. So the answer to your question is yes, we're absolutely accounting for the single lane when we're reflecting the travel times. That is taking into account the design that we're putting out there. But I did want to clarify a couple of those points that you had in the beginning, but thank you for that.
Yeah, I don't need to add on to that, Pete. I think that answered it. It's yes, it accounts for the proposed design with all of the merges that are currently recommended.
All right, thank you. The next question, also from a town meeting member, precinct 6, Daryl interests. For the project area south of Bedford Street, where bike lanes were removed from the previous design on slide 15, will that section of the roadway be marked as 2 lanes in both directions? If not, that indicates that the roadway is not wide enough for 2 lanes and the road should be traveled as a single lane there. Please elaborate about how removing the bike lanes in that area represents an improvement if the roadway is a single lane with and without bike lanes. Thanks, Daryl.
Yeah, I think what we were trying to do there is manage the queue lengths. So, if you're coming up to Bedford Street, heading north, if you have people stop there to take a left turn, you're gonna have some queuing. So I think, and Peter, you can jump in too, but I think that, it was taken out not so much as a travel lane, but to manage the queue lengths at the intersection so we can get more people through, for each cycle.
Yeah, this is where it gets tough, Daryl, and you're right. That's a great comment. I'm going to ask Jess to comment here on the design, but this is an area where it does operate as 2 lanes. And when we went out, our staff went and drove the corridor. We did field visits and we took traffic counts and we measured all these things. And again, everyone here knows this who drives this. It does operate as 2 lanes. And while that's not the formalized lane width, that it's not a design that we would propose on a new road, we recognize that putting bike lanes on there significantly increase the queue lengths, as Dave was saying, which would go backwards and block intersections and make some pretty unsafe conditions at intersections. And so based on that assessment, MassDOT decided at our recommendation that we remove these bike lanes in order to not create that queuing issue. And Jessica, if there's anything you'd like to add, I appreciate it.
I think the concern is valid. Essentially, we're not solving the safety concern in this section of having the wide travel lanes because it's not wide enough for us to mark 2 full travel lanes in each direction with the shoulder. But our analysis did show significant, concerns that were validated from the public about, the impacts of, formalizing 1 lane in each direction here. And so, what we're really trying to do is improve safety where we can without introducing, significant new concerns along the corridor. And this section is certainly a compromise in that sense.
All right, thank you. And I know there's a bunch of raised hands, so I'm just going to take one more question from the Q&A from a town meeting member, Betsy Hughes from Precinct 7. One of Betsy's questions was, do you have any sense of how much of the traffic on this road cuts through to avoid Route 128 or Route 3? Thank you, Betsy.
I don't know if we have that information available tonight. I mean, I know if 128 or Route 3 is backed up, this, 3A gets flooded with traffic. That's typically what happens. But do we have, I don't think we have any data on that right now. I'm not quite sure people use it as a cut through unless one of those 2 roads is backed up. But I don't think we have specific data on that to present tonight.
All right, and I know I see a lot more comments and questions in the Q&A, but I also see a lot of raised hands, so I'm going to turn it back over to Hung for a while so that those people get a turn to speak too.
Thank you. I'm going to go through 3 raised hands. First off, I have a list running right now. John, I'm going to give you the floor.
Thank you very much. Yes, this is John Strauss from the old Burlington Transportation Committee. And one of the issues that we had raised while our committee was functioning was the intersection there, Wynn Street and Cambridge Street. A lot of people had safety concerns with the left turns and the pedestrians and so forth. And I know within the constraints of your resurfacing project, were you addressing any of these issues?
Dave, I can hop on that one if you don't mind. So we did a road safety audit, and if you're on the transportation committee, you probably know what that is. But for everyone else, that's where there's an intersection of concern, whether it's high crash or there's just a major intersection of higher numbers of vehicle collisions. And we went out on the site and basically invited the town of Burlington, town of Billerica, PD, I think any of the transit authorities. I think there were several different public agencies involved in that road safety audit at that intersection because it is a complex intersection. You're correct that we are not changing any of the geometry. So when you're talking about a curb radius or moving or widening the road, anything like that, that's not happening on this project because it's limited to a resurfacing maintenance project. However, what the benefit of the road safety audit is that we're able to identify, any improvement that we think could be made to this intersection. And they range from basic stuff like updating crosswalk markings for better visibility. That's one of the things that we are including to improve the safety there. They talk about signal timings, and then they talk about large scale improvements like, hey, you could replace this intersection with a roundabout. Way beyond the scope of our project, but we assessed that intersection and listed all the potential enhancements that we found and discussed as a group. And that, I think we did that in 2020. I think that maybe 2021, but to answer your question, Most of those large scale improvements are not included in our project, but many of the ones that were lower scale, like improving visibility, making sure that our stop bar was within the cone of vision, making sure that people turning traffic they were able to see their signals, all that kind of thing, all those kinds of adjustments that were small scale, we did incorporate into this project.
Great, Dave. Thank you very much, because people do fly down that hill, so that does become critical, and it's always a concern. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Next on my list is Christine. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much. Christine Warren, Precinct 4 Town Meeting member. And I am a previous speaker, I thought summed it up very well. I think it was a Mr. DeBona, that it's a good compromise. It's not everything I would want, you know, but I think there's something for everybody. My concern is, because I would have preferred less 2-lane each way, but there are other people who feel differently and I respect their opinions. My concern is when the two lane goes back to 1 lane, are there going to be clear markings or signs that say left lane ends, merge, or something so that people know it's not? I think that's one of the biggest problems, is that people, once they get going on a two ways, they don't realize that it's one, it goes down to 1 lane in certain sections. So I guess I would want to know if that would be addressed so that people are not going over the yellow line or sideswiping each other and so forth. Thank you.
So the question is, I mean, you're gonna go down to 2 lanes as you approach intersections. I think once you get through the intersections, I think that's where I know in Bedford Street, you know, you have your left turn lane and then your right lane is your through lane that naturally goes into 1 lane. Peter, do you want to feel this one? I think mostly, I mean, this is all, the transition from 1 lane to 2 is all at the intersections, you know, to try to manage the level service and get as many people through as we can in those intersections.
Yeah, and there are a few tapers that happen in between intersections, but I'll ask Jess, our traffic engineer, to elaborate a little bit more. But I can tell you, Christine, in broad scope, you know, I don't know that we're using the left lane ends sign that you referenced, but what we did do is, you know, follow the MUTCD, make sure that the pavement marking and the signage is very clear, and that issue that you've identified of confusion for drivers is one of the primary, if not the primary, safety issue we tried to address during this design. Jess, do you want to give a little more detail on that, if you don't mind?
Sure. Yeah. At every point where we ask vehicles to merge, we're providing merge warning signs ahead of that location. And then we're also providing lane reduction arrows on the road to further reinforce and catch driver's eye, you know, to warn them of that upcoming merge. So that is going to be an improvement from what's happening today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine. Next person I have is Mike S. You have the floor, Mike.
I wrote my question in the chat. It was basically, is there going to be any improvements to the road surface before next spring? Because there's a lot of potholes as there are now. Do we foresee any work being done to fix those before next spring?
Yeah, Mike, as part of this project, there won't be any major paving operations before next spring. But you know, the district office is always out doing spot fixes and patching. So if the road, you know, if there needs to be some isolated repairs, that would be something that would be handled through the district office, you know, as an intern basis through the next year or so before we get out there with this project.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mike. I'm going to hand it over to Leah now. There's about like 20 ongoing open questions. Leah?
Yep, so looking for some people who haven't had their questions answered yet. I see a question from Kim. Will there be any new drainage taken into effect to deal with the increase in potential flooding with our weather patterns of more severe weather? Thank you for that question, Kim.
Yeah, great question. We are not doing any additional drainage as part of this project. You know, that was out of the scope of what the intentions were. So the quick answer is we're not doing any drainage. And if there was a larger project following this, that's something that would be looked at.
Thank you, Dave.
If I could just jump in, and Pete, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are improving or replacing a lot of the castings out there.
Yes.
Be much more high efficiency castings, and we'll do, you know, catch basin cleaning and pipe cleaning where necessary, which will improve the drainage situation.
Yeah, and the castings, for those who don't know, that's the grates that are on the road surface. So we're replacing those, upgrading those, but not increasing storage capacity of any of the drainage.
Thank you. The next question is from AD Tracks. They're asking for a map of where it's 1 versus 2 lanes in each direction, and also have a comment to please add right turn lanes only Francis, Wyman, and Cook Street. Thank you, AD.
So yeah, as we mentioned earlier, this project is going to be advertised on September 2nd. And at that point, the plans, when we advertise the project, that means it is for public bid for contractors to bid on the work. At that point, those plans will be made public, and you'll be able to get a copy of those plans that show all the locations.
Pete, do we have a right turn at Francis Wyman? Do you know?
Let me look.
We do not.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, and let's scroll through here. There's a question from Mildred. Mildred says, Cambridge Street currently is driven as a 4-lane road in 2-lane areas. This illegal reality adds dangers to bikes on Cambridge Street. I favor bike lanes, but the reconstruction may add to bike danger. How does the reconstruction address this reality? Oh, and I see at the end of the comment here that that Mildred is also a town meeting member in Precinct 3. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks, Mildred. So that's one of the things that we're looking to address specifically by formalizing the lanes. You know, what you hit on is a big portion of this project. There's 2 lanes. It's a 2-lane road right now that operates as 4 in a large part of the whole corridor. We're putting down traffic markings, bike buffers, bike lanes, and making sure to narrow those lanes so that it doesn't look like a 1 wide lane or 2 wide lanes. It actually looks very clearly like 1 lane. And there will be, you know, pavement marking very clearly that shows a bike buffer on the ground and a bike lane next to it. And it'll be clear to all vehicular drivers, all vehicle drivers, that they should not be driving there.
Yeah, I guess I just like to add on that too. By adding the pavement markings for the bike, going down to 1 lane, we're anticipating the speeds to be slower on the road. You know, the additional pavement markings, signage is a traffic calming technique. So with the lower speeds, we're hoping that improves the safety as well.
Thank you both. I see 1 or 2 questions, you know, generally asking about like local roads being used as a cut through. I'll read one of them and then I'll try to mark a bunch of them. One of them is from Bob Aloisi Jr., who says the latest update has a bike lane and 1 forced travel lane in each direction from Kinney Ave to the Billerica line. This added travel time will be more than 2 minutes at peak northbound. What will you tell the residents of neighborhoods who will see increased traffic as a cut through? So thanks for that, Bob, and everyone else who asked about traffic cutting through local roads.
I mean, you know, we don't anticipate, you know, a situation where it's, you know, traffic isn't moving within the corridor. Traffic numbers showed that the volumes out there going down to one lane, you know, outside of the intersection areas will flow pretty good. You know, as you brought up the last meeting, there was some concern at the intersections where you currently have left turn lanes and through lanes, and we addressed that. So I don't think we're anticipating traffic to be moving within the corridor similar to what it is today. So I don't think right now, we believe there will be a lot of cut through traffic.
Great, thank you, Dave. And let's take one more question from the Q&A before going back to some raised hands. This question is from Janet Zahora. The last repavement of the part of the road coming down the hill from the town common to the light at Wynn Street was needed because of bad washboarding. People having to brake for the light during hot weather probably caused this. Is there anything extra that can be done to prevent this in the future? Thank you, Janet.
Yeah, I don't, you know, that's probably from heavy truck use braking that you get that washboarding. I don't know in that area, you know, we're obviously going to take out the washboarding when we cold plane or where we take off the first couple inches of pavement. You know, we once we take it down to the sub base where the pavement doesn't have the washboarding, and add the additional top course, you know, there shouldn't be any washboarding. But you know, it's something that we can look at a little closer, you know, after this meeting to see if there's something we can do with pavement, you know, to try to avoid that in the future.
Yeah, and I can tell you, Janet, we have in the project, there are some surplus quantities for pavement patching, for example. So if this is a location that we need to go a little deeper to replace the washboarding area, that'll happen during construction. That's not something that we put on the plans at this stage because we want to give that flexibility to the resident engineer and the contractor to have that extra quantity to go fix these unique areas. But the way that I found success with repairing washboarding is just really good tack coat, making sure your adhesive is strong between the two layers of pavement. But that's a great comment, and thank you for pointing that out. We'll make sure to address it. I don't know, Brian, if you have any additional thoughts on that.
Sure, I can add one other thing too, that we're going to be using a heavier highway pavement course out there with a larger stone, and it's polymer modified. It's kind of, you know, one of our newer pavement mixes that should stand up a lot better to braking and truck traffic than previous pavements we've used.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. I only see one as Lindsay Klein. Lindsay, do you have anything to add?
Hi, yes, thank you. So I'm glad to see that you guys aren't reducing it down to one travel lane in the section from Bedford up to the high school, but where you are reducing it to one marked travel lane with a marked bike lane from the used bookstore heading towards Billerica. How are you addressing people taking left-hand turns into all of these businesses and residents and side streets? You keep talking about traffic queuing. And somebody else was concerned about drivers entering the bike lane to go around traffic turning. Traffic is so heavy at times heading in the opposite direction. You could be queuing behind a car for minutes waiting for them to take a left-hand turn before the flow of traffic can continue, which in turn creates queuing all the way through the light, whichever light is behind you.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead,
that's a
Dave.
great question. You know, I just, again, go back to, you know, the project, we're working curb to curb, right? So we couldn't change the width of the roadway. And what we're doing is striping only. So if you do have, you know, a vehicle that wants to take that left, theoretically, you're gonna have queuing behind him. In actuality, what's probably gonna happen, the roadways, it's the same width from the center line to the curb as it is now. In actuality, if there's no bikes coming, you're probably gonna have people going around that car that's stopped. That's probably the way it's gonna work, you know, once it's done.
And to add to that, Dave, just to be clear, Lindsay, the main goal of this project again is safety, and it's a lot safer to make a left turn across one lane of traffic that you know is one lane of traffic rather than what might be one or two, and you think you're crossing one lane of traffic, but then surprise, there's another car coming right beside it. And that's one of the benefits of having that single lane of traffic to turn left against, is that it really does increase the safety.
Thank you so much. I saw earlier someone who dialed in with the number ending 206. If you still want to ask your question, if you can, please press *9 to raise your hand, and I will give you the floor to unmute yourself. Give it a minute. Yay! So if you dialed *9, you can unmute yourself. I mean *6. Did not say *9.
I am Mildred Nash, and I was given an opportunity to speak. So somehow you managed to get me, even though I was on the phone and it was done with my speaking. So don't worry. I spoke. You listen. Thank you.
Thank you. We just want to give everybody an opportunity. Thank you so much.
Right.
With that, I will hand it back to Leah to grab people who have put in their questions in the Q&A.
Sure. All right. Let's do a nice easy one that I see here from Peter Hodges. Is there available info on the crash data that you referred to trying to abate? Thank you, Peter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have that tonight. I believe we presented that at the last meeting. But we have, you know, as part of the project, there was a full functional design report, which is our traffic report, that was submitted earlier in the project, that had all the crash data for the last several years that we've obtained through the local police and state police departments. We can make that available, you know, if that's something you want to see.
Yeah, Peter, there were a couple comments you had like that about looking for the road safety audit and crash data. If you just want to email me, I think my email's in here, or email Dave, you know, or Joe. I mean, really anyone on this call, we'll talk to each other and make sure we get you the information you need. If you're mentioning the crash data that I brought up at the Wynn intersection, it comes from, it's a MassDOT public website. I think it's the HSIP website where they have the high crash locations. I never remember the website. I just Google it every time I try to seek it out, but you can find it online. And if you want that link, I can send that to you too.
Yeah, I think any requests for information like that should probably come through MassDOT.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could send it, you know, to the links that we provided at the last slide, it'll go to the project manager, and then we can send it out from there.
Which is a great segue. I think everyone's looked at this Q&A slide long enough. We don't seem to be having any trouble participating. So Jean, if we could go back to the contact slide, I want to be mindful of people's time. If you're getting a little hungry, you don't have the chance to answer your question, or you want to ask something really specific, we have a number of ways to contact us. Snail mail, the project management email, and you can get more info or see the presentation when it's posted, or look back at the previous meeting materials by scanning that QR code with your phone.
Yeah, that's a good point, Leah. This presentation will also be available on that website in a couple of days, so you can have this as well as the first one.
Yep. All right, let's go back to some more questions from Betsy Hughes. I believe, if I remember correctly, a town meeting member from precinct 7. Betsy asked, if we make this a 4-lane road, 2 lanes each way, doesn't this just encourage fast driving through our town center and high school areas? Thank you, Betsy.
Yeah, and I can tell you that's not happening on this project. That would be when we're talking about widening the road, that's a larger scale, larger scope, not even a plan yet. It's a hypothetical that could happen. But what you're talking about, that would be absolutely considered evaluated to be part of that plan. They would ensure that safe speeds were achieved through, traffic calming measures and signal timings and all the great tools we have to manage traffic. But we're not making a 4-lane road anywhere.
No, and that's something we mentioned, a larger project, earlier. And, a lot of traffic would be done at that time, but you can have other roadway cross sections. You can have 2 lanes, 1 in each direction, and a shared left turn lane in the middle. That would keep speeds down and allow for the left turns, where it's necessary in the car. There's a lot of different things you can do, and that would be part of a larger study.
Thank you both. The next question is from Peter Hodges. Can the immediate problem of the road resurfacing be accomplished without changing the other alterations, specifically bike lanes? What could be saved by deferring the alterations to a later, more thought out proposal? Thank you for that question, Peter.
So because of the funding source, there's federal funds on this project, there's MassDOT initiatives on this project. The answer is no. We have to include these alterations, specifically ADA compliance, so improving pedestrian curb ramps, signalized crossings, making sure that the push buttons are accessible. It's good practice. It's a good accessibility measure to include, but it's also a federal law that it has to happen whenever you do a resurfacing project. In addition to that, it also requires us to provide accessibility for bikes and pedestrians. And I want to make a note too that with the majority of this project where we're introducing new bike lanes, we're using space on the road that would otherwise be a wide shoulder, because it is we're formalizing the road to be 1 lane. There's just not space to put 4 lanes for the majority of this project. But all that aside, I mean, the short answer is no. We do have to comply with the state and federal laws that require bike, pedestrian, and transit facility accommodations and upgrades on these types of projects.
Thank you. The next question is from town meeting member Daryl Interest from precinct 6. He said, follow up to my previous question and the panel's response. I appreciate the need to compromise and also not introduce new significant safety concerns. With leaving the wide single lane to allow queuing between Bedford Street and Burlington High School, that helps during times when queuing occurs, which is 2 to 4 hours per weekday. The balance of the time, people routinely drive 40 to 55 miles per hour on this stretch of road by the high school. So I suggest considering this a significant hazard. Thanks for that comment, Daryl. Would anyone like to respond to that? We just want to.
No, I think it's a great comment, and I don't know if it's Darrell or Daryl, but I agree with you, and I think it's a good consideration. And again, the type of project that if a larger one came through, this is the type of thing that comes up at a road safety audit or a functional design report where we talk about how are people using the facilities.
All right, the next question is from Michael Koulopoulos. I know it was mentioned that curbs, sidewalks, and pedestrian walkways will be the first phase of the project. Will the work scheduled to begin in Billerica or Burlington? Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, once we have a contractor on board, he will come up with, he'll provide us with a schedule on how he wants to do the work. Usually they'll have one crew or one sub contractor that'll do curbing, so he'll bring those guys in first and do curbing or do some of the drainage, covers and grates. And the small stuff like that first, but until we have a contractor on board, we don't know for sure on which end he's gonna start. So we should know that later in this year.
Thank you. The next question is sort of a comment from AD Tracks, who writes only one speed limit sign. Maybe we can take this as an opportunity to talk about the speed limit, or we could just note that.
The comment was only one speed limit sign?
Yeah.
Yeah, I took that comment as that there is only one speed limit sign out there, and I can tell you we're putting new signs in where we need them.
Okay, great.
And if that's inaccurate, let me know, but that's how I read that comment.
Perfect. All right, the next comment is from Bob Aloisi Jr. Says, thanks for the answer. I invite you guys to drive the corridor during peak times. Some of you guys were probably out there during peak times, right? Collecting traffic counts.
We have that we specifically went, not I didn't, but people on this call did go drive this themselves, but it's noted. I understand the sentiment behind the comment and totally appreciate and respect it.
Yeah, I live in Wilmington. I grew up in Burlington. I'm on that road at least once a week, and I've been driving it for years. So I hear you. I understand.
Thank you. The next question is from HH. Are there going to be restrictions on which type of vehicles are allowed to travel in the bike lane, like scooters or e-bikes? Thank you, HH.
That's a great question. There are no restrictions. It could be a bicycle, it could be an e-bike. I don't think there's any formal regulations on that right now. But the answer is no. There it could be either one of them.
All right, we're cruising through these questions. The next one's from Sherry Ellis, a town meeting member. Has MassDOT been in contact with the Burlington Police Department to determine if there are any plans for enforcement or education of the new traffic patterns? Thank you, Sherry.
Yeah, I don't think we've specifically talked with the police department about that. I think, as we get into construction, that's a good point. And, there will be having a lot of interaction with the towns and our engineers on site. And maybe we should prepare, some graphics or something to, make everybody aware of what the final condition is going to be like, and have some kind of public outreach, partnering with the towns. So that's a great idea. We can look into that.
Great. The next up is a comment from John, who says that washboarding issue is a real danger for bikers. It shakes the bike so hard your hands can shake loose from the handlebars, especially if you don't expect it. Thanks for bringing that up, John. And then the next one is from Ted Manka, who says, I don't think you answered the question about what people are supposed to treat the one lane as two, where the bikes are removed from the project. Are you suggesting that people continue to use the one wide lane as two lanes? How else will removing the bike lanes help motor vehicle traffic queuing?
Yeah, so I know you directed that question at Jessica, and I'll ask her to hop on here in a second, but Ted, what we analyzed was that if we introduced the bike lanes as we had previously suggested, or we had previously designed, our additional analysis, our additional traffic counts showed a very significant increase in queuing at that area. And with the queuing, I'm not trying to be rudimentary here, but just for the benefit of everyone on the call, the queuing, what that means is a long line of vehicles that back up one after the other. And if that happens in this area, it'll eventually lead into entering into intersections, and that creates a safety issue. It creates traffic jams. We did not want to introduce that condition into this project. By maintaining the existing traffic pattern the way that it is, we are not going to make it any worse than it already is with this project. Now, I understand what you're saying, that, well, wait a minute, are you telling people to drive it as 2 lanes? No, we aren't. We're encouraging everyone to obey traffic laws and to stay within the single lane as it is. But in reality, it operates effectively now because people do use it as 2 lanes in each direction during those peak hour times. And that's kind of where this is a gray area of balancing, project need within the constraints of what is a maintenance project. The goal of this project is not to improve traffic. The goal, we're definitely not trying to make it worse, but the goal is not to improve traffic. However, when there's a condition like this one, where putting in bike lanes would make it significantly worse, we're not going to do that either. And that's kind of the ebb and flow of this entire process, has been within the pretty hard boundaries of project constraints that we have, just trying to find that best solution that that meets the legal and federal requirements, but also is within the goals of improving safety in the corridor. And I don't know, Jess, if you have anything to add, or Ted, if that answers your question, but it's a fair thought, and I understand it.
I don't have anything else to add. I think you covered it, Peter.
Thanks.
All right, we have a couple more open questions in the Q&A. I'm gonna ask a question from Lucy, who I haven't seen ask a question yet. Where do buses pull over for bus stops? Would they need to pull into the new bike lanes, which could make it hazardous for bikers? Also, are sidewalks legal to bike upon, which was the suggested option made when the bike lane tapers? That would pose a hazard to pedestrians. Thanks for those questions, Lucy.
Yeah, so the buses would pull over similar to as they are today. They would be in the bike lane. Is it the best solution?
Well, no, Dave, we have bus stops marked out, and there's specifically bus stops that are marked for all the LRTA and MBTA stops, and it wouldn't be parking in the bike lane. The way that the markings interact with each other, there's clear distinction between the bike lane and the bus stop. So the bus stop won't be stopping over the bike lane. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Jess.
Great.
I just want to clarify quickly on that. So the buses would be pulling against the curb, which would conflict with the bike lane. So a biker would need to be aware of the buses pulling against the curb. But as Peter mentioned, they're going to be marked. So that all of the bus stops will be marked as bus bike only in that section, to give both bikes and buses a warning that that's going to be a shared space in that area.
And would anyone like to comment on the second part of that question? If the sidewalks are legal for bikes, and how that works with interacting with pedestrians?
Yeah, I don't have a legal answer for you right now. I can tell you that at one point it was I want to be careful here. At one point, there was the belief that it was legally allowable for bikes to ride on the sidewalk where there's not bike facilities on the road, but it's a good question. What we are providing is a curb cut so that bikes can get up onto the sidewalk out of the road for their own safety where there's not a bike lane. That still exists in this project in a few locations. we're not encouraging cyclists to ride their bike and run over pedestrians. You know, theoretically, cyclists could walk their bikes at those areas. In reality, that they'll probably continue to ride if there's no pedestrians on the sidewalk. And I think that is, this is my opinion. I'm not telling you that this is the law. I think that that is legal for bikes to ride for cyclists to ride their bikes on the sidewalk when there's not a specific bicycle facility and there's not pedestrians present. I think that's the case, but I could be mistaken.
All right, thank you. Take a little break from the Q&A because we have someone with her hand raised and I think she's had it up for a while. So let's quickly jump to the raised hands.
Okay, thank you. Lindsay?
Hi, yes. So I believe it's Peter, kind of already partially addressed what I wanted to comment upon, but it's my understanding. So in the comments, I read that you guys did measure the bicycle volume traffic. In the years I have lived in Burlington, I have seen very, very, very few bikes ever utilize 3A. And when I posted about this meeting happening to remind and inform residents on the town page, I got over 100 comments in less than 24 hours, 95% of which were against the bike lanes. And the very few cyclists that did comment chimed in. Several of them said that even if there was a bike lane on 3A, they would not utilize it. It's my understanding, based on what you guys have been saying here, that in large part, the only reason you guys are adding in bike lanes is because it is mandated in order to receive the funding. Is that correct? It's a money issue?
We have to follow federal and state guidelines for multimodal transportation, which includes bikes. So any project we have right now, obviously not interstate highways, but any project we do right now, we have to evaluate and accommodate bikes.
Including on what is basically a major road through town. I mean, we're not talking about a little side street or a neighborhood project where you would often see bicycles. This is a major thoroughfare through our community that people use as a commuting way. And we just don't have the volume of people bicycling for commuting that would warrant this. So what is the threshold at which a roadway falls under this federal requirement? What designates it to be required that you provide a bike lane?
I know the posted speed has something to do with it, and I want to say 50 is a threshold. Any limited access roadways, you know, where you have a state roadway where it's high speed and you have no curb cuts, like some sections of Route 1 is not required to accommodate bikes. But I think, and I'm gonna look for Peter and Howard Stein Hudson to help me, but I think it's the speed is, you know, a major factor.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Pete.
No, and Lindsay, so I'll come back to how does it trigger that it requires bike accommodations. But what I can tell you is the counterpoint to what you're saying, and I hear you, I agree that I haven't seen too many bikes out there. And I know that there was another comment too about how many bikes did you count. The counter argument to that is they're not riding on 3A because it's not accessible and it's not something that bikes could feel safe riding on right now. And MassDOT has a calculation that I forget the exact term for it, but it's basically potential for biking and for cyclist use. And 3A has a high score where it's a high potential road for cyclists to use. And it's because of exactly what you said, that it's mixed use. There's commercial, residential, business, there's churches, there's shopping, there's a lot of different mixed use on 3A. And there's not a place for cyclists to use that facility. If we introduce it, then it's a fair measure to see whether or not cyclists are going to use that road. The counterpoint is the counter argument also to that is, you know, if you've got really high vehicle numbers and really a lot of vehicle congestion, by providing another alternative where it's improved transit, if we're improving the bus stop spacing and the bus stop accessibility, which this project does, and we're improving the bicyclist facility that we are, you know, maybe some of those drivers will choose to go use that alternate mode. And I hear you. I understand what you're saying. It's not a unique concern that you have. I think that comes up a lot on many of these projects as they go through the state and every state in the country. But it's not just a federal funding source that requires this. I know that I mentioned that we have federal funds in this project, and that triggers, you know, I think it's the FAST Act, or there's some Transportation Act that is required to be met. But because it's a state project, it's a state law that on any state route, you have to go through a process of assessing whether or not you're meeting the accessibility design standards for cyclists. And there's a whole division at MassDOT that reviews that and goes through the plan, and we go back and forth with them to try to come up with the best accommodation and what the bike design could be and what it should be. You know, we talked about how to include them on this project, where would they fit, and different concepts. And it's a very iterative process, but it's a MassDOT requirement. So I don't know that every MassDOT road, like you said, Dave, you know, you're not going to put bikes on I-95, but every MassDOT road has to be assessed for, is there potential for bicycle use and bicycle access? And 3A is, you know, all green flags. Yes, it meets the requirements for being potentially accessible.
Well, thank you for that explanation. No matter how much I disagree with it, I will just leave with one last comment. And it was actually something that somebody else commented on the town thread, and it said, this is not a case of if you build it, they will come. The cyclists already said that they do not want this. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay.
All right, with that, I'm going to go back to the Q&A. And thank you for your patience. It looks like a significant amount of our attendance has dropped in the past 10 or 20 minutes. So thank you for the people who are staying patiently on to get your questions answered. From Daniel Collins, you have referenced safety as a top priority several times. However, you stated the changes to the project south of Bedford Street will not fix the safety issues there. How can you justify dropping safety as a priority? It's not clear what is going to happen in this area south of Bedford Street. It sounds like people are still going to drive it illegally as 2 lanes in this stretch of corridor without any striping clarification. Are you planning to have a wider shoulder or a wider breakdown lane?
So it's a good comment, Daniel, and you're right. It is. I'll speak for myself, and I know everyone else on this call agrees, or everyone else on this panel agrees. Safety is the top priority of this project, and that's a true statement. But that's part of any design on an infrastructure project like this, is that there's a balance, and we have to, while safety is the ultimate goal, it's not the only constraint. And when we had this, and I'm not sure, Daniel, if you were at the meeting we had on this project in November, but overwhelmingly the response we got was, don't put bike lanes on this road. And that is, you know, as I just explained to, I think, Lindsay, we're required to. But that doesn't mean that we're not listening and trying to accommodate and trying to find a collaborative result that it essentially ends up being a compromise. South of Bedford, you know, I did mention this earlier, I'm happy to repeat it a little bit. If we put in bike lanes there, it would significantly increase queuing. It's the magnitude of that impact that made it where it was not feasible to put those bike lanes at that location, even though it would have formalized the lanes and it would have potentially improved the safety there. That safety trade-off, the potential safety improvement was not justified by the negative traffic impacts that would have been resulting from that queuing. And it's, you know, your comment specifically kind of highlights the challenge of this project overall, where we've had to try to weigh and balance all of these sometimes directly conflicting goals with pretty tight constraints. And that's why we have a project that ends up being, you know, what we're proud of, and we think is going to be a very good project moving forward for the community. It's going to improve the road. It's going to improve safety. We're going to achieve a lot of added benefit for all different modes of transportation, but it's not going to be perfect for every single box. And that's because of the overarching constraint of this being a maintenance project with a limited budget. $7 million is a lot of money, but $7 million over 3 miles is pretty limited in scope of what you're able to actually construct. And we didn't have a lot of budget to make all of the broad scale improvements we would have liked to. If we had, you know, a $50 million budget, then we would have fixed that for sure. So I know it's not a great answer, Daniel, but that's been this whole project, is just trying to balance those solutions.
Thank you. The next question is from Z Wang. It's a follow-up to another question about providing left turn lanes at Burlington, Jade, Arthurwood, and County Road. And it's saying many cars turn left in those locations, and adding left turn lanes would help with peak traffic. Would it be possible to add left turn lanes there? Thank you, Z.
Yeah,
So,
I
yeah,
mean,
go ahead, David.
Well, I think, you know, as part of the whole design, we analyzed where the areas where heavy left turns were. You know, the Burlington Jade, the restaurant, Arthur Woods, and Country Road. I don't think that it was a heavy left turn movement, heavy enough to warrant a left turn lane at those locations.
Yep.
I will say, you know, we're gonna have engineers on site during construction who will be monitoring, you know, things like this if there's problem areas. So, you know, if things come up and they need to be addressed during construction, it's something that we'll have the ability to do. But right now, I don't think the traffic numbers did not show that left turns were warranted at those locations.
Thank you, Dave. Next up is a question from Jane. If we encourage bikes and e-bikes, etc., what measures are going to be taken to deal with bikes endangering pedestrians? And then Jane also adds the comment, they have no licenses, give no IDs, no insurance, and could possibly bike recklessly and with no regard to any other road users. So thank you for sharing that opinion, Jane. I think I'm going to move on to the next question from Peter. Can the authority for regulation and maintenance of 3A be transferred to Burlington and Billerica? Great question.
Yeah, that's we don't usually get that request too much.
The other way.
Yeah, usually it's the other way. The towns would rather have the state plow the roads and do the maintenance. So I don't know, Brian, do you have any answer to that one?
Yeah, sure, Dave. We do have a discontinuance of state highway procedures and standard operating procedures that we have that ability. The thing is, the towns would have to want the road and the state would have to want to give the road. So there has to be an understanding from the very beginning of the towns wanting to accept the roadway and the maintenance of the roadway, And then it would have to be something that we wouldn't consider as part of the highway system where we'd want to give it away. So starting there, would have to have that agreement to start that process. After that, it's a pretty complicated 19-step process where the roadway, basically the land of the road gets transferred to the town through, the registry of deeds and acceptance of, the county commissioners and all that. So it is pretty much a complicated, long process to do that. And it has to start with the understanding that we'd want to give away the road to the town and want to accept it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. The next question, or the next is actually a comment from Daryl, who says, Peter Robluski pointed out that formalizing the road as a single lane would leave a very large shoulder, regardless of the bike lanes. We might as well just not stripe them as bike lanes, leaving them diagonally hashed as non-travel areas to satisfy the anti-biking arguments. Also, as Peter has stated, the scope of this project can't accommodate all possible improvements. So, thank you for that comment, Daryl. And then it looks like the last comment we have is from Lindsay. And Lindsay says, I would respectfully disagree. The county way does not warrant a left turn lane. I ride my motorcycle on 3A and turn left on county. Motorcycle blindness is a real thing. It's why the state teaches us to ride like no one sees us, because motorcycles are often overlooked by car drivers. I would be extremely worried about being rear-ended if I had to stop there and wait for an opening to turn left. Thank you for that comment, Lindsay. With that, we don't have any more open questions in the Q&A, nor do I see any more raised hands. And given the fact that it is 8:10, I want to be respectful of people's time. I'm going to turn the floor back over to Dave to close us out.
Okay, thank you, Leah. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for attending tonight. And thank you to everyone, the towns of Burlington and Billerica and all our panelists. As we said earlier, you can still get in touch with us to ask questions through the email or snail mail. If you think of anything after this meeting will be available on our website along with the previous one. So I'd like to close the hearing. The current time is 8:11. So I will declare this public information meeting closed. Thanks again.